Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for staying with us after the coffee break. We promise we will have a very interesting panel, and we're going to look at the reconstruction of the Schengen area. We all know that the free movement of people is often regarded one of the best achievements, definitely one of the most visible achievements of the European Union. And indeed, the Schengen area has successfully survived the most difficult part of the migration crisis that started in 2015, but we're still living with the consequences of the migration crisis. We can look at what was supposed to be temporary internal border controls. When countries like Germany, France, Norway, Sweden, Austria, and Denmark introduced the temporary border controls in 2015, and which were most recently reintroduced in 2019. At least until the May of 2020. These temporary arrangements, temporary border controls, are increasingly more and more difficult to square with the official Schengen provisions. But also, furthermore, this fragile system of the stability in the European Union and the successful migration management is to a large degree dependent on the success and functioning of the external deals with third countries, like Turkey, Libya, Morocco. And none of these deals is guaranteed to be very stable in the future, which means that Europe might be heading to another crisis unless we improve significantly our internal migration management and border control arrangements. That's why we're going to discuss today a few things that concern the Schengen area and in general how Europe can better look at what's happening with migration internally and what better ways we can devise to improve the system. I have with me today an excellent panel of 4 speakers, which are very representative across the regions. I have Alessandra VENTURINI, who is professor at the University of Turin and also associate fellow and the former deputy director at the Migration Policy Center at University Institute, Florence. Then to my left, I have Christophe Bertossi, who is currently director at the Center for Migration and Citizenship here at the host institution of IFRI in Paris. And to my right, I have Berndt KOERNER, who is Deputy Executive Director at FRONTEX, currently based in Warsaw, and Roderick Parks, who is Senior Analyst at the EU ISS here in Paris as well. So we will try to be brief in our remarks so that we have a few rounds of questions and answers. And for the first round, I will ask the speakers to give brief introductions and share with us their opinions on what are the strengths and weaknesses of the Schengen area, what are the current situation with the migration flows in Europe, and potentially start identifying which measures need to be taken to improve the system. Alessandra, we'll start with you.
Enchantée, je suis très heureuse d'être ici. Je vais quand même parler en anglais, étant donné que tous les panels ils parlent en anglais. Non. On
m'a demandé de parler en français.
Ah oui, alors je vais essayer mon français, mais je m'excuse comme l'ambassadrice autrichienne avant, que mon français est un peu occasionnel. Alors, je voudrais surtout commencer avec des nombres pour avoir des points de référence. Alors, en Europe, il y a plus ou moins 57 millions d'étrangers qui représentent 10% de la population européenne. Avec ce nombre, nous avons 40% qui sont immigrants qui viennent de pays membres, c'est-à-dire Italiens qui sont en Allemagne, en France, comme ça. Les autres 5% sont des Américains, des Néo-Zélandais, et les autres sont les immigrants des pays tiers. Alors bon, ça c'est déjà très important, mais ça veut dire que la partie des immigrants européens qui bougent dans l'Europe sont soumis à la normative européenne. Donc, l'entrée, il dépend des législations européennes. En revanche, les autres, ils font tout référence aux lois nationales. C'est-à-dire, l'Espagne, il facilite l'arrivée des gens de l'Amérique latine, la France, c'est des anciennes colonies, l'Allemagne, les Turcs, comme ça. Donc, ça dépend tout des législations nationales. Alors, ça, c'est très important parce que quand on parle des lois, on doit comprendre bien la composition des gens qui entrent. Si vous regardez les stocks et vous regardez les flux, les gens qui arrivent dans un pays, vous voyez que plus que 50% des gens qui arrivent, ça vient dans les porte de la réunification dans le canal de la réunification familiale. Donc, vous ne voyez jamais dans les journaux cette citation. Dans les journaux, on parle seulement des réfugiés. Mais en revanche, 50% des immigrés qui arrivent chaque année, donc les flux et évidemment aussi les stocks pour les Turcs, il est beaucoup plus, pour les Marocains, il est beaucoup plus, qui sont anciennes migrations, il vient comme réunification familiale. L'autre 25%, ce sont pour les raisons de travail, les autres sont des étudiants. Et d'habitude, cet nombre, ils ont un flux annuel de 2 millions de personnes. 2 millions de personnes. 2000 personnes, pardon. Donc, ça veut dire que les réfugiés qui sont augmentés, pas les réfugiés, les demandeurs d'asile qui sont augmentés dans 2015, ils n'ont jamais arrivé à ce nombre. Il était 200 000 avant. Dans l'année de majeure augmentation, c'était 1800. Alors donc, 1800 000. Alors ça veut dire que toute l'attention sur le phénomène migratoire, il n'est pas visé au stock principal des migrants, qui sont 10% de la population, mais on la minorité des demandeurs d'asile, parce qu'ils sont médiatisés à tout prix et les politiciens, ils utilisent cette media transmission, media visibilité pour leur politique interne, pour attirer l'attention des électorats. Alors, le problème est que les ports de vent, ils ont aussi une porte pour faire entrer légalement les demandeurs d'asile. Et cette porte, il est utilisé par le commissariat des réfugiés. Mais le nombre que le commissariat des réfugiés est arrivé à faire entrer dans les pays industrialisés, donc même les États-Unis, c'est 200 000. Un nombre minuscule par rapport à la pression. Parce que les pays, ils n'ouvrent pas la porte devant pour avoir des demandeurs d'asile. Étant donné qu'ils ont peur que la porte derrière, il va pousser, et donc déjà, ils vont déjà entrer dans cette canal. Donc, cette complication, parce que les demandeurs d'asile, ils ont un traitement tout à fait différent des migrants de travail. Ils ne sont pas aménagés par les pays de destination jusqu'à ce qu'ils arrivent à avoir la protection internationale. Et l'arrivée par les portes derrière, il a créé un sens très fort de perte de contrôle du phénomène. Et l'opinion publique, il a aperçu elle est très sensible à cette mismanagement, à cet aménagement pas correct. Si vous regardez les données de l'Eurobaromètre, en 2015, la migration, c'était au 4e rank, au 4e niveau d'intérêt, il est passé au premier. Il est resté très haut, plus que le chômage, plus que les problèmes fiscaux de budget nationaux, plus que le terrorisme. Alors, c'est-à-dire l'attention et la misperception, la perception fausse de la quantité d'immigrants, en Italie, qu'ils étaient 11%, il était aperçu 37%. En Grèce, la même chose. Alors, toute cette médiatisation, je ne sais pas si on dit ça en français, médiatisation du phénomène, il a créé un intérêt prioritaire à résoudre ces problèmes. Nous, on a fait une recherche à l'Institut universitaire européen Migration Policy Institute, et on a demandé aux gens des 8 pays où il y avait l'Autriche, la France, l'Allemagne, l'Hongrie, la Pologne, l'Italie et la Suède. Ce sont 7 et l'Espagne. Alors, dans tous ces pays, avec un championnage très large, 129 000 personnes, un championnage de 1500 personnes par chaque pays, donc très large. J'ai demandé aux gens ce que vous pensez des réfugiés, qu'est-ce que devait être la politique des réfugiés. Et le résultat est que dans tous les pays, soit de l'Est que de l'Ouest, les gens, ils disent qu'il faut protéger les réfugiés et les demandeurs d'asile. Mais il faut les protéger avec un contrôle des limites, des conditions. Quand vous allez lui demander, mais vous voulez une organisation européenne pour cela, ou vous voulez une organisation nationale, un contrôle national, sauf l'Italie qui veut un contrôle européen, même en Espagne et dans tous les pays, ils veulent un contrôle national. Alors, ça veut dire que l'Europe, pour gérer Schengen, pour gérer les problèmes réels qui sont 90% du phénomène migratoire, il doit résoudre le management, la gestion des flux de réfugiés. Et le Conseil du ministre, ça va être au centre de cela. Mais il doit organiser une gestion européenne. Donc l'agence des réfugiés qui contrôle cela. Ça sera impossible pour les pays membres de gérer la migration sans résoudre avant ces problèmes, qui est dans l'agenda, dans la priorité, dans les journaux tout le temps. Alors donc, Schengen, c'est la vraie priorité, mais l'autre phénomène, c'est celle qui empêche une solution concrète. Pour cela, je termine. Merci.
Thank you very much, Alessandra, for outlining the summary of what's going on in Europe, but also indicating to us a few approaches and areas what we need to look at. And I would like to pass the floor to the representative of the agency, which in a way got its increased mandate exactly because of the phenomenon you described, the increased attention to the external border management and the protection, not necessarily against, but the protection in order to manage the flows of the people coming from the outside. Berndt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and good afternoon from my side. Thank you very much for this honorable invitation to participate in today's panel here. And apologies, I will be English. Ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning when our chair set the bar for the opening statement, I thought, well, this is quite a challenging task, because what are the strengths and weaknesses? How will it look like? How are the flows? And at the same time, try to be brief. If I take the first three, I could cover the afternoon. But I promise I will not. I will try to give you a first glimpse into the situation, and I would very much like, together with you, to look a little bit backwards in order to understand how the current system looks like and what possibilities we might have in the future. The reason why I would like to look a little bit backwards in the context of Schengen and the very often mentioned need to reconstruct Schengen, to reload Schengen, to go back to Schengen, is we should understand or sometimes remind ourselves where we actually come from. And it's in fact 29 years ago when I started myself working in this field at local level at the border to Hungary, and it was the year number 1 after the opening of the Iron Curtain. At that time, border control, if you allow me, Mr. Ambassador, was largely in the hands of customs, and that was the first time when we both got into contact with each other. Today, all those countries who were the first line of illegal or irregular migration are EU member states. When we started then to prepare ourselves to join Schengen, we were confronted with an intergovernmental process and an agreement that had at that time 142 articles covering external borders, visa, asylum, SIS, police cooperation, judicial cooperation, and information exchange. This was the basis. And in fact, the asylum part never entered into force because at that time in parallel there was already Dublin, and the asylum parts of the Schengen Agreement, the Schengen Implementation Agreement, were never actually used. And in the visa field, I don't know who still might remember it, we had the white list, the gray list, and the black list, things that are somehow now ancient history, but this was less than 25 years ago. Today, we are facing the fact that Schengen equals EU. You cannot join either or. This is since the Treaty of Amsterdam, and I think it's also worthwhile to look at the Treaty of Amsterdam, where it's posted the EU should maintain and develop the Union as an area of freedom, security, and justice, in which the free movement of persons is assured in conjunction with appropriate measures with respect to external border controls, asylum, and immigration. Quote from the Treaty of Amsterdam. You could also quote from the Treaty of Lisbon, offering EU citizens an area of freedom, security, and justice without internal frontiers should be one of the EU's main goals. This is Lisbon Treaty. And today we very often say that Schengen has been considered a fantastic project, a tangible, popular, and successful issue, and something that we need to preserve, we need to revamp, we need to reconstruct or reload. But Schengen as such goes much further. The only thing that seems sometimes not to function, in fact, is the context of the external border controls, because the Schengen information system, nobody would doubt that this is one of the most successful international databases. Eminently important for criminal purposes and eminently important to uphold public safety and security. So many parts of the original Schengen Agreement are functioning, and are functioning very well. But how did we progress since then? Today, and this is now the process that already functioned within the European Union, today we have not only the two databases anymore, the SIS and Eurodac. We have altogether 12 databases. We have the Schengen Information System, the Visa Information System. We will have the Entry-Exit System, the Electronic Travel Information and Authorization System. We have FADO, we have PRUM, we have ECRIS, we have PNR, and we have dozens of regulations, directives, and decisions. So why doesn't it function? Schengen, in its original concept, was based on the fact that it is a common area of free movement that comes with advantages as well as obligations. We had this one-for-all principle, and we had the principle of solidarity. So I would like to have a few elements mentioned that we should focus on. I mentioned that we have a lot of databases, we have a lot of regulations, directives, and decisions. We need to work on implementation. Each country by itself, and in a spirit of solidarity, then also together. It cannot be, and now I'm focusing on our own agency, that in 2016 we get Regulation 1624, which brings us from 300 to 1,000 until 2020, and in 2019 we get the next regulation, that this is the 1896, which will enter into force on the 4th of December, which will then bring us from 1,000 that we have not even achieved up to 10,000 that you can read in the newspapers. It's a bit different, it's not the 10,000, it will be 3,000, but to live in a constant period of change will not help. We will need to have the time also for implementation. And we will also need to have the time to foster trust among the partners. If you look at the system, the European Union has three different strategies in this field. On one hand, we have this harmonized set of rules. Then we have a number of common tools, among them the databases, and we have a certain number of agencies, altogether 8 in the field of justice and home affairs, and we have a peer review and monitoring scheme, the Schengen evaluation mechanism and the vulnerability assessment mechanism, and we need to work on that, and we need to work to build trust. And wherever we find deficiencies or shortcomings, we need to support each other and team up. We are very good in helping third countries outside the EU external border or further away in capacity building, but we should also help ourselves in capacity building at external borders, where we have border sections where countries are under imminent pressure. We have every week between 1,200 and 800 border guards deployed all over Europe to support. But this business model has proven to be insufficient. And we also need to invest in the future. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let's face it, a few years ago, we thought we need additional personnel, then we got the 1,000, now we get the 10,000. If you look in the future, we might find out in a few years that 10,000 is also not enough. We cannot go further like that. But we also need to look at technology. We need to look how we can utilize long-distance flights. We need to how we can utilize intelligence gathering, information gathering, new technologies, airborne surveillance, in order to further develop our own procedures. A very good step in that direction is a model that has been, for the first time, made binding in the 1624 regulation, our current regulation in the agency. This is the concept of European integrated border management. Because there is border police, there is police, there's customs, there's veterinary, there's phytosanitary, and many other entities that might be connected more or less with external border control. Those entities need to work together. They need to work together, first of all and foremost, to facilitate the legitimate travel, a legitimate travel that is the largest quantity of the whole travel that crosses the external border, and the need to facilitate external border traffic. Let me illustrate it in one element so it makes a bit, it gives you a bit of a picture. The border crossing point I was starting to work on in 1990, when I started, had one lane in each direction. For those insiders, it was Nickelsdorf at the border with Hungary. By the time when we abolished border control there, we had 17 lanes in each direction. And we had an annual quantity of border crosses of 26 million. This was 2006. If we now go back to possible establishment of border control, hypothetically, let's just imagine what we will have to control. About the possibilities or impossibilities to establish border control as we have had it successfully in the past. So we will need to use this integrated border management model, first of all, to integrate all the entities that are working at the border, and secondly, also to integrate all those different layers or tiers that we call the 4-tier access control model, namely the intelligence and information we can get from third countries, the intelligence and information we can get from third countries outside of the EU external border, the work that we actually do at the border, and the work that we also then do behind the border within this Schengen area. Because only if we have that integrated border management model in the future, then also together with this multi-annual strategic policy cycle, which will team up the needs, the financial means, the planning, and also the evaluation and the quality control, then we will somehow successfully be able to establish really a border control mechanism and the border control system that will indeed serve as the strong and stringent external border that will preserve this area of free movement inside, and secondly also enable us to take care of all the different challenges that approach us at the border. For the time being, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for summarizing the activities and the outlook also from the perspective of the agency. As a representative of one of the countries that benefits probably among the probably the most from the access to Schengen area. I also appreciate your stories from back in the days, how you started doing Austria-Hungarian control, but also even now, in connection to what you said about the volume of traffic that we have to control, already now lots of people from Bratislava travel to Austria, and there are temporary border checks at the Austrian border, which of course already creates certain anxieties on the part of the Central Europeans. And with that, I would like to pass the floor also to Roderick for your take on the Schengen zone. But also we agreed with Roderick that Roderick will help us understand a little bit better the position of the Central European countries.
Righto. Thank you. Well, I'll start with two apologies myself. Firstly, I'm British. I think I'm here in a sort of Polish capacity because I used to work in Poland. I don't have Jakub's advantage on the first panel that he can criticise and take a critical distance from what's happening in that part of the world and remain a Central European. So I will be a Mitteleuropa-Versteher. So that's my first apology. My second apology is for my English. I am English. It doesn't mean to say you'll understand me. So I won't be insulted if you put up your hand and tell me to speak more clearly. I want to describe a little bit the Central European position on migration, borders and asylum. Not a sort of Austrian perspective, but more from the perspective of the Visegrad 4 countries. But funnily enough, I'm not going to talk centrally about the proposals that they've made around refugee relocation or borders policy or immigration, because I think that the position that they've reached comes from a sort of deeper structural issues within the European Union and how relations between East and North and South and so on are functioning. So that's what I'll focus on. And I wanted to make 4 points that I think are sort of background points to trying to understand that part of the world better. The first is that I think the Central European position comes to a large degree from a lack of involvement in European foreign policy, and particularly foreign policy towards the South. And it's no surprise to me that that then comes out very strongly in refugee and relocation policy. Historically, since the Cold War, when we in Europe have signed up to strong refugee and relocation mechanisms internally, it's always been contingent upon the feeling that we could influence the drivers of migration and refugee flows outside of Europe. That was strongest in the Cold War, where Western countries instrumentalized the refugee regime in order to undermine their rivals, so we would attract in Soviet dissidents in a bid to undermine these countries. But I think it was also true in the 1990s and the 2000s that we had a feeling that the world was generally improving and the economy was integrating, etc., etc. So we weren't worried about signing up to humanitarian and refugee obligations because we felt that the drivers were getting better. I think that feeling has disappeared in Europe, and in particular in Central Europe, that people look at the state of the outside world and see only chaos and apocalypse and don't see how they can influence the driving forces of irregular migration. And for Central European countries, that's particularly true of the South, I think. They say, why should we sign up to European relocation system and basically sign a blank check to people coming out of Africa and North Africa where we have no influence? And I think one of the most frustrating things is that there is actually a lot that Central European countries could be doing when it comes to European foreign policy in that part of the world, whether it be the simple fact that they don't have a colonial history in that part of the world, or that they have experience with transition and lustration, or that they have recently taken on EU standards and they know which bits of those work and which don't work. So if you're Polish, you, thanks to Frontex, have demilitarized your borders and taken on a very immigration-heavy focus because you're part of Schengen. But you know that involvement of the military in border control and of customs is incredibly important, and that's precisely what countries of the Sahel and North Africa are dealing with. So that's my first point, that I think the disinclination in Central Europe to sign up to relocation quotas comes from feeling that they can't influence what's forcing people to leave North Africa and Africa in the first place. And there's actually a lost opportunity there. Second point is that I think countries that part of the world, Central Europe, Poland, Hungary and so on, still don't feel like full European members. And the mindset still is of policy takers who have had to fulfill certain criteria to join the European Union rather than full policy makers. For me, that came to a head not during the migration crisis, but during the Euro crisis. And countries like Poland weren't affected by the global financial crisis. The economy remained relatively unscathed. They saw the Eurozone economy take a massive hit, and they thought now is the opportunity for us to sort of come forward and say, you know, the rules that you, Germany or whoever else, made us take on clearly don't work properly, so we will contribute something. And as Kuba mentioned this morning, precisely because they weren't members of the Eurozone, there was no real way of influencing policy. And I think that inability to make a positive contribution to European policy in general then came out a couple of years later in the migration crisis, that you will see a similar thing, that Germany in particular is in crisis, that Eastern member states say, you know, clearly the model that you put in place and made us take doesn't work. You've broken with European rules yourself, Berlin, by unilaterally opening your borders, and you're relying on us to close borders. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there as well. And again, I think they weren't properly able to influence European policy. So they're now in a sort of outsider role of saying, well, Germany relies on us to keep our borders closed, and we're happy to play the outsiders if Germany then plays the good European. So I think that's missing as well, that there's still a sort of policy taker mentality, and countries in that part of the world haven't found a means of feeding in a positive way into this field. Third point is that countries of Central Europe are still outsiders, and they are exceptional in certain ways. When we think about European immigration policy, if you talk to colleagues in Brussels, they like to pretend that we have an integrated European labour market, and for that reason we need a common European immigration policy. It's simply not the case. At the heart of EU borders and immigration and asylum policy is not a sense that we have a common labour market of 380 million people, which is shrinking by 0.4% each year, and we need people together, or that we are 28 relatively wealthy member states and we can team up together and meet our humanitarian obligations. It's the Schengen area, which is a really odd thing to have at the centre of your immigration and asylum policy. And that does mean that we have very separate blocks within the European labour market. But at no stage have we really thought, okay, how can we help Central European countries which have relatively similar labour market needs, which have a relatively similar language structure, etc., gang together and bring people into the EU. So we haven't properly harnessed that sort of exceptionalism. And the fourth point is that the V4 aren't a sort of uniform bloc in the EU. They're very different amongst themselves as well. So when I was working in Poland, it was always the case that the V4 countries, one of them would behave like a good European, giving an excuse to the other three not to. And at the moment, I think that Slovakia is behaving quite well, and the other three are behaving less well. But there's always scope to cooperate within the bloc. And also at a sort of level under the state, that cities like Warsaw or Budapest are not necessarily being governed by the populace, that there are more liberal governments there. So there's scope within that, I think, to cooperate with that part of the world rather than writing them off. If I can just end with a reaction of why I think that Frontex itself is so important on bringing this part of the world into sort of European policy on this. It's important that Frontex sits in Warsaw, that it's bringing together a network of 10,000 border guards and some of the most respected border guards come from Central and Eastern Europe and have the highest standards. The Frontex is getting involved in foreign policy, in particular in the south and the Sahel. It's becoming a force for European crisis management in that part of the world, and that it's based in Warsaw, and so has links to this part of the world. And it'll be really interesting to see how Frontex pulls in the 10,000 people, because my fear at the moment, and we discussed this before, is that Frontex says we need to hire 10,000 people. Where are they going to hire from? They're going to hire from the low-wage member states for whom joining Frontex is an attractive career path. That means they're going to pull people in from Poland, from Hungary, from Romania, from Bulgaria, from Greece, Italy, Spain. They're going to uproot them from those parts of the world, and then they're going to put them under the command of people from the wealthier member states who tend to fill the upper echelons in Frontex, the Swedes, the Germans, whoever it is, and then try to redeploy them to these parts of the world. So rather than being a means for these parts of the world to influence European borders policy, you'll see the opposite, that they're uprooted from the frontline member states and then put under the controls of Finns or Austrians or whoever it may be. So it'll be very interesting to see how this develops, but I think Frontex is incredibly important to have a properly integrated border policy.
Thank you very much, Roderick. I will let Frontex respond a bit later, but first we'll go all the way back home to France. Christophe, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Sorry for my French. Nobody's perfect, right? You're British, I'm French, and we're in Paris. Merci beaucoup pour l'occasion qui m'est donnée d'intervenir dans le panel. J'aurai 4 points à proposer pour cette discussion. 3 seront brefs, le 4e sera peut-être un peu plus long, mais les consignes qui nous étaient données de nous limiter à 5 minutes ont été amplement dépassées. Du coup, j'abuserai de mes 10 minutes de peur de ne pas pouvoir faire une deuxième intervention sur le reste du panel. Donc 4 points. Premier point d'abord dans cette discussion, il me paraît très important d'insister sur la très grande prudence qui est de mise lorsqu'on veut décrire ce que les migrations ont fait ou font au processus d'intégration européenne en général et à l'espace européen de libre circulation en particulier. Ce qu'on appelle la crise des migrants ou la crise migratoire de 2015 n'a pas mise à l'épreuve la confiance entre les États membres. Il est plus précis de dire qu'elle a révélé des clivages qui étaient déjà existants, peut-être qu'elle les a exacerbés, mais elle ne les a pas créés. C'est la fragilité objective de la solidarité entre États membres et donc du ciment de l'Union européenne qui a fait la crise, lorsqu'il s'est agi d'organiser l'accueil d'un peu plus de 1 million de migrants demandeurs d'asile pour la plupart. Donc mon premier point, c'est de souligner que ce qu'on appelle la crise migratoire a été une crise de l'accueil, mais elle n'aurait pas eu lieu s'il n'y avait pas eu déjà une situation critique au niveau du projet européen. La crise migratoire, c'est d'abord la crise de l'Union européenne comme projet politique commun. Ça, c'est mon premier point. Et sur l'aspect plus spécifique qui vient d'être abordé par Roderick sur la décision allemande d'ouvrir les frontières, imaginez, on a beaucoup discuté de cette décision prise par Angela Merkel d'ouvrir les frontières, mais imaginez ce qu'il en serait devenu de l'Union européenne si l'Allemagne avait gardé les frontières fermées. Mon deuxième point, c'est que s'il existe une panne majeure aujourd'hui sur le sujet migratoire ou sur le sujet de l'asile en Europe, c'est Dublin, c'est pas Schengen. Berndt l'a dit, Schengen marche plutôt bien. Ça permet de fermer les frontières, de rétablir des contrôles aux frontières lorsqu'il en est besoin. La France le fait depuis 2015, c'est pas la seule. C'est censé être limité dans le temps. Alors j'ai pas fait le compte et je sais pas où la France en est de ce prolongement du contrôle des frontières, mais finalement, Schengen appliqué fonctionne plutôt bien. En revanche, Dublin ne fonctionne pas et n'a jamais fonctionné. Et là encore, ce n'est pas la crise de 2015 qui l'a montré, mais évidemment, avec l'ampleur des flux de 2015, le dysfonctionnement du système de Dublin a été montré sous une lumière très crue. Donc, face à ce dysfonctionnement qui est vraiment lié au système Dublin de responsabilité de l'État de première entrée, de premier contrôle d'un demandeur d'asile dans l'espace européen, on sait que la réponse au problème n'est pas de renationaliser les politiques d'accueil, d'intégration des réfugiés ou de contrôle. La réponse ne peut tenir qu'à la reconstruction d'un espace européen qui fonctionne et qui s'organise sur d'autres termes que ceux du système Dublin. Or, à ce niveau, il y a un blocage politique des États membres, malgré les propositions de la Commission européenne, et l'on mélange un peu tous les sujets. C'est-à-dire que les mouvements secondaires de demandeurs d'asile en Europe liés au dysfonctionnement du système Dublin sont discutés dans les termes de problèmes liés à l'espace de libre circulation en Europe. Et on en vient à une discussion sur la reconstruction de Schengen. Donc, je dirais, pour cette discussion sur la reconstruction de Schengen, voyons ce qui fonctionne. Et sur le sujet, Dublin est quand même d'une priorité politique importante. Troisième point, alors au-delà du contexte précis de la genèse des accords de Schengen, il faut quand même rappeler ce dont il s'agissait au départ. Autrement dit, au milieu des années 80, la prise de conscience d'une contradiction au cœur du processus de la construction européenne entre une liberté, enfin la construction d'un marché commun et d'une circulation des biens et des capitaux, mais pas des personnes. Et le fait que cette contradiction ne permettait pas d'aller plus loin dans le processus d'intégration européenne. L'idée d'une liberté de circulation des citoyens européens a été précisément au départ de corriger cette contradiction. Donc il y a une dimension au départ de faire de processus d'intégration européenne quelque chose de plus que la construction d'un marché commun, d'un espace économique et financier commun, mais de lui donner une dimension politique qu'on retrouve dans le traité de Maastricht avec la citoyenneté européenne, ce qu'on appelle la citoyenneté européenne, et on l'a rappelé avec le traité d'Amsterdam. Du coup, autrement dit, il y a un lien consubstantiel dans le projet Schengen entre liberté de circulation des personnes et le fait que l'intégration européenne a aussi une dimension civique. C'est l'idée de la fin des années 80 et des années 90. Aujourd'hui, la grande fragilité de Schengen, je dirais, c'est l'oubli de ce lien entre liberté de circulation et de l'ADN initial de la construction européenne. Et sans doute la question est de savoir si la liberté de circulation des citoyens européens peut s'acclimater au changement profond des identités politiques en Europe, aujourd'hui, qui prennent plusieurs formes, on ne va pas rentrer dans les détails, mais de populisme nativiste, débats à propos desquels la question de l'immigration, de la diversité, du multiculturalisme et de l'islam et de l'asile, in fine, prennent une dimension centrale dans les disputes dont on a parlé jusqu'à présent. Donc, pour répondre avec ces 3 points sur une première réponse provisoire à la question qui nous est posée par Alena, il me semble que la force de l'espace Schengen, c'est son efficacité quand il est utilisé, et sa faiblesse, c'est que dans la tension entre l'intergouvernemental et le communautaire, en fait, une tension qu'on n'a jamais résolue, sur le sujet spécifique des politiques européennes de migration, les États membres ne jouent pas le jeu. Cette tension a toujours existé, mais la crispation identitaire actuelle l'a transformée en impasse, au point que les États membres disent « nous ne voulons pas appliquer les règles », c'est ce qui s'est passé en 2015, avec la proposition de la Commission européenne de répartition dans le programme de relocalisation des demandeurs d'asile et réfugiés arrivés en Grèce, qui a été un échec, pas parce que la Commission n'avait rien proposé, mais parce que les États membres ont dit on ne va pas appliquer le programme. Quatrième et dernier point de réponse. Alors, il y a les éléments techniques sur le sujet Schengen, il y a les éléments politiques, on en a parlé, je viens d'en rappeler certains, mais il me semble qu'il y a aussi une dimension liée à l'organisation du système migratoire international et à la place que l'espace européen et l'Union européenne occupent dans ce système migratoire international. Pour essayer d'expliquer ce dont je veux parler ici, on réfléchit en général à l'avenir de la libre circulation en Europe à partir d'un schéma où l'Europe est un espace fragilisé par les migrations qui viennent d'ailleurs. C'est-à-dire qu'on réfléchit à ces questions de libre circulation et d'espace Schengen en opposant la fragilité de notre libre circulation à la pression liée aux flux migratoires internationaux qui s'accumulent à nos frontières. Et du coup, c'est une opposition entre liberté de circulation d'un côté en interne et pression externe, pression migratoire externe, qui est au centre de la réflexion publique et du débat en Europe. Alors, bien sûr, il n'est pas possible d'imaginer un système d'organisation d'une liberté de circulation des personnes sans constitution d'une frontière extérieure. Ça va de soi, c'est le début. Mais le système mondial des migrations rajoute un peu, si vous voulez, élève le niveau général de perplexité pour comprendre le lien entre l'interne et l'externe de la question migratoire. Parce que les migrations internationales qui nous inquiètent fonctionnent elles aussi en système régionalisé. C'est-à-dire que ce n'est pas l'opposition entre notre régionalisation, notre liberté de circulation dans notre espace européen versus les migrations internationales, c'est essayer de penser notre liberté de circulation régionale avec l'obligation de protéger des frontières extérieures communes, mais en cohabitation avec d'autres espaces régionaux de circulation. Le continent africain, qui est un grand sujet sur ce thème du contrôle des frontières extérieures européennes, donc lié au débat sur Schengen, l'Afrique est un continent de migration régionale et très peu connecté aux flux internationaux. 7 migrants subsahariens sur 10 restent dans un pays proche de leur pays de départ. Or, le fait de conditionner la libre circulation européenne à un contrôle strict des frontières extérieures a pour effet de venir perturber ces espaces régionaux qui sont dans notre voisinage proche et finalement, par défaut, d'avoir l'effet opposé à l'objectif qui est en perturbant des mobilités régionales, on pousse des migrants africains qui n'avaient rien à faire sur les routes internationales à tenter leur chance vers la Libye, puis un bateau en Méditerranée, arrivé en Italie, en Espagne ou passer par la Grèce. Donc, si on arrête de penser Schengen et son lien au contrôle des frontières extérieures comme un système binaire d'une Europe assiégée par des migrations internationales, mais qu'on l'envisage comme l'un des espaces de régionalisation qui cohabitent avec d'autres régions de libre circulation en Afrique, en Amérique latine ou centrale, en Asie du Sud-Est, on peut monter en généralité et organiser beaucoup mieux, avec beaucoup moins d'effets indésirables, l'articulation entre frontières internes et frontières externes. Comment on fait ça? Les Européens sont bloqués sur le sujet. Ils ont essayé de le faire en mettant à l'agenda de nouveau la question de la gouvernance mondiale des migrations. Et ça a été une demande des Européens en 2015 de dire on a besoin de faire des progrès en termes de gouvernance mondiale des migrations sous l'égide des Nations Unies. Le résultat a été le pacte de Marrakech en 2018. Le pacte de Marrakech qui proposait des éléments non contraignants mais qui était tout à fait aligné sur la façon dont les Européens envisagent la façon de contrôler les frontières extérieures. Or, du fait de la sensibilité politique du sujet, à Marrakech, vous avez une douzaine de pays qui ne vont pas signer le document, parmi lesquels 7 États membres. 7 États membres, lesquels les pays de Visegrad, l'Autriche, l'Italie. Ces pays européens qui étaient en demande d'une solution ont négocié et travaillé pendant 18 mois sur un texte qui paraissait de compromis, n'ont pas pu le signer in fine, et c'est là qu'on retrouve le clivage politique entre les Européens qui les empêche de dépasser les apories, les impasses qu'ils ont eux-mêmes constituées en réduisant de trop le véritable enjeu des politiques de libre circulation qui sont aussi une dimension civique et un projet politique commun, et la façon dont on ne peut pas penser la liberté de circulation des Européens sans l'inscrire dans un paysage internationalisé et régionalisé des migrations mondiales. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Christoph. I'll quickly give the word to Berndt and probably Alessandra, if you want to react to the statements of the previous panelists, and then we will open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much. Three brief replies. The first one where I asked if I could react was thank you for your kind words concerning FRONTEX, but this made me at the same time react because according to the 1624 regulation, we are all the European Border and Coast Guard, so let's not get into the trap that Frontex shall be strong, so let's export all the external border problems to Warsaw and let Warsaw solve them. They have the 10,000 and so on. It is the European Border and Coast Guard. This is the agency and all the national authorities connected to border control. Because this is the usual, if you allow me to say, game that is being played between national sovereignty and giving powers to any other authority. At one side, keep the national sovereignty over the border section in the respective member states, but at the other end, then say, well, let Frontex deal with the problem, this won't work. We have some executive powers now, but we have to do it both. The second issue I would just like to react on is a little bit open borders versus closed borders, because also this issue has two sides. The first one is, of course, the one that was mentioned concerning the opening of borders, the unilaterally opening of borders, that I will not comment on, but we are now having also sometimes the comments that we have successfully closed borders. And all those who are saying that we have successfully closed borders, I would invite to look at Velika Kladuša, at Bihać, at the camps in Vučjak and so on, where we have successfully closed borders, and we have again deadlocked people at places where from the humanitarian point of view, we are at the edge of a crisis. No doubt about that. This is the result of closed borders. So let's not talk about open borders versus closed borders. We need also to work on that. Otherwise, we are at the edge of a new crisis because sooner or later something will break out there. Third part I would like to mention, because it was mentioned in the context of Dublin and whether Dublin has worked or not, as one of the reactions in order to prevent the at that time terrifying loss of lives by migrating through the Aegean Sea, the EU-Turkey statement was mentioned, and some accelerated one-to-one returns was initiated together with Turkey in order to make people believe, let's take a legal way and not an illegal way. The result of several years of working is that currently we have 38,000 people stuck in the hotspot islands. In 2019, roughly 20,000 have already been transferred to the mainland. So we are successfully feeding the migration flows ourselves by not properly being able to solve the crisis in the Aegean Sea. Which brings me back, and this is just what I wanted to mention also, and then I'm already finished. We need to implement what we have. And it cannot be that several times we are tightening the rules and initiating new provisions. We need to implement what we are talking about. Thank you.
Yes. Just two very small comments. The first one is on the frontier control. Okay, the Mediterranean country, Italy, Greece, Portugal, and Spain are very professional in legalization. So the back door, Italy had 7 legalization, not now, the one before. We started in the 90s. The first one is 89. That means that our country to which you cannot leave the control of the borders, because it's very difficult to control the border in this country. We have thousands of coasts, and probably the institution and the people there are benevolent and so on. So it's something that we are not professional in doing. So we count on Europe exactly because we know the limitation. So we count on other institutions. In fact, in the survey that we made, only Italy against the other want to have a European agency. And politicians use this all the time. Because they want to win the election, they don't want to solve the problem. You have to consider that we have a strong political instability in Italy, in Spain, and so on. Only in Greece you have political stability because there's a commissariat. You have commissar. But this is the situation. So you don't have politicians who want to solve, but to use for election. That's the reason why we didn't sign in Marrakesh, because signing was meaning engaging in a step toward a solution. And the second point, and you need stable government. So the second point is that, as the colleague has mentioned, we don't have in Europe a single labor market. We don't have. We have different welfare states, but first what we have different unemployment rate. In Germany, the unemployment rate is 4%. In Italy is 11%, but you have Milan, which is more or less 5%. You have the South is 20%, for the young 60s. So inside the country is a large country, so you have a lot of difference. What we have, we don't have the same welfare states. In addition, South European countries suffer a lot of brain drain, because we are very low in the level of university education. We are the lowest in Europe. Even Portugal has passed the Italian registration at university. But university students, the best one, they go out. So when you speak about Schengen, okay, we are very happy of Schengen, but we are obliged to implement program to attract back what we call the brain. And East European countries will have the same sooner or later. In 10, 15 years, you will have the same. But we also had experience having two countries in Italy, the north and the south, that the brain drain is reduced in the development of the area. If the best leave, this area remains underdeveloped. Given that the governmental budget is impossible to invest in technological pole and so on and so forth. So even if Schengen is part of Euro, is very important, I think that it should be complemented or supported to not get area behind. Because it's what Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal have. So you need, and the Italian government is in a transition, is unable to invest in anything. We have a fiscal deficit and so on. But in Spain, they don't have a government. So the political instability of the Mediterranean shore is very strong. But what we risk is to replace with low-skilled migrants, because the migrants that go to the South European are all low-skilled. Anyhow, also the skilled who are implementing low-skilled jobs. A downgrading of South European countries with improving Schengen. We are not against Schengen because our priority is only asylum seeker. We look only at this. But this is a worry, and this is the university is strongly engaged to create technological pole, to create position for highly skilled.
Thank you much for this.
Yeah. Sorry, just to weigh in also, because Christoph, you were kicking me on the imagine if Germany had done differently. I won't talk in terms of closed or open borders either. There's a reason that FRONTEX talks of border management, because there's no such thing as a fully open or a fully closed border. What Germany did may have been the right moral decision, but the way it took the decision was wrong. It was unilateral. And the one thing that we've learned about border management in Europe is that you need to cooperate. And by doing that, it gave countries of Central Europe a political excuse to also have a unilateral border policy and to talk in terms of a broader sort of East-West division between, we may be a liberal democracies, but you're undemocratic liberals, etc., etc. And then Germany takes a unilateral deal, essentially, with Turkey, which is then revealed to European leaders at a summit that they hadn't even been warned about it. So those decisions are wrong. And I think there's a direct line between that unilateralism and the situation that you describe at borders. You know, go to Lesbos. Western member states have pushed border problems to the southeast. Greece has pushed border management to the islands. The mayors on the islands say, you know, why are we on the front line here? We won't give you permission to expand the camps, so you have 6,000 or 7,000 people sitting in camps on Lesbos that are made for 3,000 people. Every time the Greek government takes people off the islands and repatriates them to Greece, Turkey sends exactly that number through to the islands in order to keep the pressure up. There's a direct line, I think, between unilateral border management. That was the situation when I was there. It may have changed. And the situation that you describe in these camps, in these transit zones that are incredibly badly managed. So I'm not being a Mitteleuropa-Versteher here, but you know, this is I think, you know, the root of the problem.
Je pense qu'on aura une discussion avec la salle sur la décision d'Angela Merkel, mais je pense que c'était une décision qui n'avait pas une dimension morale, mais qui avait une dimension politique et qui avait une dimension européenne. C'est à discuter. Ce qui me frappe, c'est évidemment le lien qu'il y a entre la façon dont on fait du management des frontières par le biais des politiques européennes et la catastrophe humanitaire que cela crée. C'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, est-ce que l'Europe est condamnée à avoir une politique de frontières qui transforme ses frontières, je pense à la Méditerranée, en frontières les plus meurtrières au monde? C'est une véritable question. Et là aussi, je crois que ce n'est pas une question morale, c'est une question quant à l'efficacité des dispositifs et aux responsabilités d'États, par ailleurs signataires de conventions internationales, parmi lesquelles le respect de la vie humaine ou des droits fondamentaux des personnes est censé être engagé. Il me semble qu'on aurait pu anticiper la crise de 2015 et on ne l'a pas fait. On savait très bien la situation qui était celle des camps de réfugiés en Turquie. On sait la proportion de population réfugiée dans un pays comme le Liban ou la Jordanie. On n'a rien anticipé et aujourd'hui, la politique migratoire a pour conséquence de fragiliser considérablement la politique extérieure européenne dans une situation régionale en Syrie, où on est aussi lié vis-à-vis de la Turquie par la crainte que les frontières soient ouvertes entre la Turquie et le reste de l'Union européenne. Donc non seulement on a un problème quant au coût humain, humanitaire et de droits fondamentaux, mais on a un coût politique très cynique à nous lier avec des partenaires qui ne sont sans doute pas toujours fiables comme on le souhaiterait. Je m'arrête là parce que j'avais d'autres commentaires, mais je pense qu'il faut laisser du temps à la discussion. Merci.
Thank you very much. Now we can open the floor to the questions from the audience, and we will take several questions in a row. We have a question here. And
Professeur Ostrovsky, je mène des sessions aux Nations Unies à Genève contre la migration illégale africaine vers l'Europe. Je vous pose la question, que pensez-vous? Faut-il pas envoyer la frontière en dehors de Schengen pour arrêter la migration qu'elle est agressive? Nous avons vu à Paris dans le 17e, 18e, on n'attend plus la belle langue. Et nous avons vu aussi les conséquences dramatiques à la préfecture de police. Merci.
Question over there and over there.
Bonjour, Janine Rivals, ancienne fonctionnaire internationale et vice-présidente de l'Amphi. J'ai eu le grand plaisir d'être reçue à Frontex une grande journée au mois de juin, mais je n'ai pas très bien réussi à savoir si Frontex allait assurer aussi les frontières maritimes. J'ai vu un tout petit bateau dans le port de Lesbos, mais je ne sais pas auquel cas il faudrait peut-être bien plus de fonctionnaires à Frontex et aussi des moyens, des bateaux enfin conséquent pour assurer ses frontières maritimes de l'Europe. Merci.
Question over there.
Very short comment why Central Europe has this position towards immigration, skeptical. Well, 3 additional reasons to the ones that Roderick mentioned. First of all, no experience of immigration. Instead, these societies live of stereotypes that are abused by politicians, both in government and outside of it. Second reason, self-perception of vulnerability and still fresh memory of being refugee status type of people in Europe themselves. So rightly or wrongly, Poles or Slovaks believe that they should be the beneficiaries of assistance, help, and of some privileged status as regards solidarity in the European Union. And third reason, I forgot competition in the labor market. Very often these are people who go to other member states and take up employment which the nationals of third country nationals want to take themselves as well. And finally, this eastern dimension of the European foreign policy. Poles think about Ukrainians or Armenians or Georgians, and they think, rightly or wrongly again, that what happens with African countries, this is part of post-colonial affairs of countries like France, Spain, or Portugal. And my last point, and maybe question to you, is a thing that you mentioned yourself, that we are dependent on Turkey. We are actually, President Erdogan is holding us by the cojones, as the expression goes. I think it's very sad conclusion as regards prospects of global Europe. And the question is whether it's a perennial one, whether there can be an efficient and enlightened immigration policy without being nasty and cold-hearted at the same time. Experts quote very often the example of Australia as a very efficient immigration country and very system. If you think of Nauru, people, stranded somewhere in the camps in Nauru, I don't think that it's a very enlightened policy. So the question goes, how do we deal with it? How do we make sure that Turkey does not, or Turkey or Senegal or Morocco or countries that have imploded like Libya do not hold us at gunpoint and have influence on our European policy? Maybe we need to be cold-hearted ourselves and only limit the streams of people who come to European shores. But if it's the price to pay for our sovereignty at global stage, maybe it's worth paying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will take one last question from the gentleman in the back over there.
Yeah.
Donc, service de santé des armées. Pourquoi est-ce qu'il y a si peu de pays européens qui s'impliquent avec la France dans la gestion de la crise sécuritaire au Sahel?
So we have 4 questions. One, in the moving the borders outside of Europe and externalization of migration and borders means to Frontex, dependence on Turkey and third countries, and the Sahel management. Please, you do not have to respond to all questions, but pick up.
You see, if you, en français, n'est-ce pas? Si vous regardez les données des gens qui arrivent en bateau, qui posent la demande pour la protection internationale, le nombre de gens qui reçoivent la protection internationale, donc qui sont des vrais réfugiés, c'est différent dans chaque pays, mais la plupart, il est 40% seulement. Les autres, ils sont des gens qui voudraient seulement venir à travailler. Mais les pays de destination, c'est qu'ils font. Ils ferment toutes les portes. Même les portes pour entrer légalement comme travailleurs. Alors, si vous regardez les données de l'Europe, les entrées pour des permis de travail, ils sont très peu, ils sont réduits. Alors, donc, la solution principale, c'est d'ouvrir les portes devant. Donc, l'entrée légale pour travailler. Pour éviter l'utilisation de la seule porte ouverte, la porte derrière, pour entrer, pour aller à travailler. Dans l'Afrique, il y a plein de gens qui viennent et qu'il faut tous les processus pour avoir la reconnaissance internationale de protection internationale, mais qui n'ont pas de droits. Alors donc, si les pays, ils ouvrent, comme il a fait l'Allemagne dans le passé, aussi la France dans le passé, la porte pour avoir des permis de travail, vous aurez moins de gens qui entrent, également dans les portes derrière.
Thank you much. First point I noted down, move borders outside of Schengen. I know it's a quite popular phenomenon, but also from two sides. There are people who are not so much in favor of this, often blaming us for externalization of border control, meaning the task that we have to fulfill, move it to third countries, let them do the work so we are safe. I'm not so much in favor to move borders outside of Schengen. What I am, on the contrary, highly in favor of is we need to work together with those countries. We need to do capacity building in those countries. We need to bring them on the tracks where we would like to have them. We need to cooperate with them so that we can also then rely on them when they are observing their southern borders, for example, so that migration control in this field works better. Second issue that I noted down was coastline FRONTEX boat, and this goes a little bit together. We are now in the process of upscaling staff and technical equipment. For the time being, we had human resources and technical equipment given to us by the member states that were running and supported by the agency. So whenever you saw a FRONTEX boat, to quote, if you allow me, then it was a boat from a member state running under FRONTEX support. The difference between now and the future will be that we are now being tasked to purchase our own vessels. We have already concluded framework contract to lease the own airplanes, and we are continuing like that. The foreseen financial budget, especially from 2021 onwards, is enormous, and we will have to go into massive investments in this field. So yes, you hopefully, if everything works out, we'll see more FRONTEX boats, because as a European border and coast guard, we also have to take care of the coastline. The coastline, with the additional staff that we are acquiring, we are expected to have all together with the member states until 2027, 10,000. They will then run together with the member states and equipped with executive powers and survey the border and do also border checks and participate in migration management in the broad sense. So this is the additional tool that we are coming up with. Third point I noted down was depending on Turkey. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the one who would like to defend Turkey. Please don't get me wrong. But if you look at the main nationalities at the Eastern Mediterranean route, I may quote, it's Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Syria, and Congo. This does not have its origin in Turkey. We have not been able, we as a whole, the whole wide world has not been able to solve the Afghanistan crisis for many, many years. We have problems in Pakistan. We have problems in Bangladesh. We have not been able to solve Syria, and we are now experiencing also routes that are bypassing the Central Mediterranean route and ending up via Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean route. This goes for Congo. So please, let's also look at the crises behind Turkey. And Turkey is accommodating millions of migrants and has taken a load that would have been unbearable probably for Europe if this would have been the case. What we have factually on an operational level experienced is a bright gap between what is the operational attitude, and there it is quite easy and quite pragmatic to work together with Turkey, and the political line. The political line is different from what we are experiencing on the operational level. The operational level is working at least to the extent that we would like to have it quite properly. Last point I noted down Sahel. The simple reason is that for the time being, our competence went outside the EU external border to third countries bordering the European member states. That's the reason why we currently have one single operation in Albania at the border to Greece. With the new regulation, we will theoretically have also the possibility to go outside to third countries, not bordering member states, but this simply has not been the case so far. Yep.
And I will ask Roderick and Christoph to be very brief and pick up on the questions.
Yeah, 3 points. EU-Turkey. Turkey doesn't have us by the cojones. That's bollocks. It's a phantom of the mind. If Turkey opens its northern borders, it loses control of its southern borders, and it also loses control of all the political distance that it's very keen to keep at home. So the idea that it's going to open the floodgates is nonsense as far as I'm concerned. The only vulnerability is the fact that we have pushed the entire migration crisis into small camps on Greek islands. And as I say, I think that the Turks can leverage that in a very controlled way. But the real problem is a European mindset that says we're the centre of the earth, we're under siege, and we're the ultimate destination country. Everyone wants to come here. Leads me to the second point, which is on dealing with migration from Africa. I think that the trouble with our policies is again this siege mentality. We go around the world putting together policies that present ourselves as the ultimate destination zone, and they become self-fulfilling. Only when the EU tried to do a deal with Ethiopia did we realise that the world is slightly bigger. So European diplomats went to Addis and said, we'll open up the European labour market in return for you keeping Ethiopians at home. And the Ethiopians said, well, Europe isn't interesting to us as a labour market. If you want to be useful, team up with the African Union to put pressure on the Gulf cooperation countries. That's where our nationals want to go. And why would you allow Ethiopians into Europe? You'll just do what you did in West Africa, create a dependence that wasn't there before. You'll start reducing the cost of remitting money back to West Africa, and they'll start pushing their nationals into Europe. That's madness. And so I think from that point, the European world sort of opened, and we realized that we're not the only destination country, and that we have got partners externally. And that's something that came out of the UN convention that the UN pact that Christoph mentioned. So suddenly we realised that all countries have concerns about emigration and immigration and transit, and the big divide between Africa as a sending zone and us as a destination zone wasn't there, which leads me back to Cuba. It's precisely the fact that Eastern Europeans do have an emigration history which is relevant now. European countries remain in the immigration destination zone mindset, and it's precisely the idea that we need to deal with emigration from Europe, open up opportunities for Europeans to leave Europe at the moment, which I think then allows us to cooperate with African countries and other zones, because our migration interests are much more proximate than they used to be.
Christoph, you have 30 seconds for your last word.
Fair enough. Il y a un effet de visibilité de l'immigration africaine vers l'espace Schengen, mais en 2015, au moment donc du pic d'entrée par les plages grecques, la première nationalité extra-communautaire à laquelle on donnait le plus grand nombre de titres de premier séjour, c'était les Ukrainiens. Donc il faut aussi resituer la part de l'immigration africaine très visible, parce que extrêmement médiatisée dans des situations humanitaires et institutionnelles difficiles, à une approche plus globale des flux. Deuxième chose, c'est que ce n'est pas à Lesbos ou à Lampedusa que se joue la frontière principale où passent ce qu'on appelle les migrants en situation irrégulière. C'est à Schiphol, c'est à Roissy, c'est à l'aéroport de Francfort. C'est-à-dire que la plus grande fabrique d'une population de migrants en situation irrégulières, ce sont ce qu'on appelle en bon français les overstayers. C'est des gens qui entrent avec un visa, qui rentrent avec un titre de séjour, mais qui n'ont pas la possibilité ou qui ne le renouvellent pas et qui se retrouvent de fait en séjour irrégulier. Et dans cette situation, la porte principale finalement d'entrée dans l'espace européen, c'est la régularisation et beaucoup la régularisation par le travail. Donc c'est une voie d'entrée, d'immigration, de travail régularisée ex post qui crée un problème, un défi, je crois, une contradiction démocratique très importante, puisqu'on ferme parce que la mesure est populaire, mais on a des besoins de marché du travail, d'ailleurs, pour des main-d'œuvre très qualifiées comme très peu qualifiées. Donc on le fait sans le dire, on régularise, ce qui pose un problème d'accountability des politiques publiques, ce qui pose un problème de pragmatisme dans la définition des objectifs des politiques migratoires, donc un problème d'efficacité. Et tant qu'on n'aura pas des politiques migratoires efficaces, on ne pourra pas prouver aux opinions publiques et aux électeurs que les gouvernements ont repris le contrôle. Et du coup, on continuera à produire des sociétés difficiles à gouverner.
Thank you very much for the wonderful panel and for the wonderful question, and we need to proceed to closing remarks.